Hi, this is Rachel Mills with Make and Create Drawing Skills. Today we're going to be doing some art inspired by Greece, ancient Greece and all of that. So from my research, there are sort of 4 different sort of periods of Greek art that we kind of have Greek art split into because it is such a big lengthy topic. We're going to be focusing today on geometric art, the sort of art you see on vase paintings. I've got a few in front of me right now that we can put on screen for you. And we are going to be focusing on Minoan. So we're going to be focusing on Minoan art, and that would be, but yes, I believe it's the Isle of Crete where the Minoans are, where the Minoans were actually. So we're going to be doing some art inspired by vase painting. So I actually have some ink. So if you have some ink, that's going to be amazing and you can use that. If you don't, you could use watercolour or any other sort of paint, because I'm not going to be using like an ink brush, like an ink nib. I'm going to be using a brush today. Because if you do look at the geometric art, like the vase paintings and things, it's going to have, but anyways, I think it lends itself well to ink. So, if you don't have any sort of paints or anything at all, don't worry, you can just use like a pen or something, or a marker. I think marker would probably work really well as well, if you can really try to get a nice smooth finish and everything, so like really layering your marker as well. But anyways, let's begin. So to begin, you're probably going to want to do some studies. So that's why, and one of the many reasons why, I'm going to show you all these different vases and vase paintings and things. And I myself right now, I'm going to work on a study. I might start in pencil actually, but I'm going to start very simply in pencil. I'm not going to try to do all the details and things in pencil. I'm going to do like a little bit of a stick man, but a stick man with a little bit more, you know. I'm going to see if we can get on screen the vase that I'm actually working on, or the bit of vase, because I'm just drawing the one wee figure from the vase. He's got his eyes up here actually. There we are. So that's him, roughly him. So I'm getting my ink out and my brush. I believe this brush should be called a rigger, because brushes actually have different names. And I like it because it's going to have like a lot of flexibility and everything, and I should be able to get small lines. So there we are, that's my rigger in ink. So I'm going to give him a little bit more, there we go, a little bit more in his arms. And he's got these sort of ears and everything. A lot of the art that ancient Greeks would draw actually had to do with their gods. So if you're familiar with ancient Greek mythology, you might want to start thinking about that yourself and maybe draw some of their gods. Should be really interesting. I personally really enjoy the stories. If you do want something extra to do, then definitely go read some of their stories. Because actually, their stories have been painted again and again and again, even outside of ancient Greece. You have Botticelli's Venus. And that wasn't painted by an ancient Greek artist. I think that was painted by a Renaissance artist. So we might do that in another week, talk about the Renaissance a wee bit. So one of the reasons this is actually called geometric, is because, not because of these little organic men that you have going on, but you have these sort of geometric shapes. So you might actually want to do that. You might want to actually sort of put it on a vase and make a sort of surface pattern. There we are. So I'd recommend taking your time and trying to get them as straight as possible. I kind of messed up a little bit there because I'm in a little bit of a hurry just to show you guys. This wee fellow has a tail. He might be some sort of centaur or satyr type character. That's actually where centaurs have their roots in ancient Greece. Stories of Chiron, the centaur that taught Hercules. If you have seen Disney's Hercules, it doesn't have a very accurate representation of ancient Greek mythology, but maybe you want to illustrate some sort of characters and scenes from that in this sort of ancient Greek pottery style. They actually did that in the movie and did it quite nicely, I think. So if you have seen Hercules, you'll be at least a little bit familiar with the sort of ancient Greek geometric style. I'm actually trying to leave a little bit of white between the legs to sort of separate them, because if you do look in the actual drawing, they do have these sort of white lines and things there. It would be ideal if I was on an ancient piece of pottery, I'd be able to like scrape away that ink maybe. But alas, we're using paper today. So another very common sort of Greek motif. There we go. Is something like this, if I remember correctly. Something like that. Let me see if I can find, there we are, I found it. Yeah, so the actual motif, we'll pop it on screen if we can, is something like this. This is a very, very common Greek motif. I've actually seen it on some buildings in Glasgow. And again, that's just because of the sort of Greek, ancient Greek fascination that the world has had for a really long time. That's why the Renaissance happened, because they were so fascinated by ancient Greeks. There we go. Look almost like waves. I think their version looks a lot more geometric than mine. But yeah. So that'd be Greek geometric art. So I would love it if you guys could make some sort of pattern for yourselves. I'm not really finished mine, and that's fine. You're probably going to think out your pattern a bit more. You might also want to do something a little bit more organic, even though it is geometric art. I'm actually going to see if we can get a picture on the screen of this octopus. It's actually one of my favourite motifs. Just because of this whole fascination with the sea. The sea's always been kind of scary and dangerous and fascinating for us all. So I personally really adore the octopus motif. So if you want to do something with that, either a pastiche of it, a copy of it, or incorporate it into your own design, I think that'll be amazing. So yes, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you come up with there. So for our next sort of project, we're going to move on to the Minoans. So now we're going to move on to Minoan art. Now you're going to get out your coloured pencils, your watercolour, and any sort of other coloured media you can find, because Minoan art is quite colourful. Now a lot of Greek art actually is quite colourful. If anyone's aware of the sort of classical Greek sculptures, they were actually somewhat recently found out to have been painted beautiful, bright, vibrant colours. So that's a wee tidbit for you. So we're going to have some Minoan art on the screen. You can have a look at that, get some inspiration. Again, you don't have to do the same exact poses and everything. You don't have to do a copy of these. You can if you want to, and I would recommend you a copy to begin, perhaps, like a sort of little practice copy of the art to really get a good look at it and really sort of understand the sort of stylistic ways they work. because they do draw differently than, say, say an old master in like Rembrandt or something. They're obviously drawing very, very differently than that. They have this different style. They have a formula for it. They're not just doing this because they don't know how to draw. This is how they've been taught to draw. It's the same thing with ancient Egypt, actually. If you look at all their sort of weird bendy limbs, they had very strict rules for how everyone was drawn. And it actually shows, because everyone is very uniform in ancient Egyptian art. Everyone looks in that same exact style for many, many years, because they had these rigid rules of this is how you draw. So, for Minoan art, this piece that I've actually got in front of me that I'm going to sort of look at and copy a little bit of is a picture of the sort of bull situation where they're like jumping over the bull's back, and it looks really insane. So I am going to do a bit of a pastiche of it. I'm going to get out. I'm just going to be sketching with a coloured pencil, just because I can. And also, like, I find if I'm going to sketch with graphite, I have to do it very, very, very lightly and like erase it and everything after if you're going to go into coloured pencil later. Because otherwise your coloured pencils can get a bit muddy. You know, you can sort of get that graphite in there and it's a big pain. So I would recommend you go in very, very lightly with graphite and then erase later. So I'm just kind of starting out in his basic shape for now. I think I am going to illustrate a different story. There is a story in ancient Greece. I think it's actually the same island, Crete, Minoan. If Minoans came from Crete, I believe they do, because they have a lot to do with bowls. Anyways, I think it's the Isle of Crete and has to do with the whole Minotaur legend. If anyone's heard of that. I'm going to illustrate the story of Europa. She was a very pretty lady who the god of Zeus took a liking to, so he turned her into a bull. So his wife wouldn't find out he was trying to hang out with her. Wait, I don't want to do a person over here. Yeah, I just want to do the bull. I actually really like the sort of wavy lines texture on this bowl. I think it's quite lovely. I may have to go in once I've sort of coloured it and sort of add that texture back. This is a nice long body. Now again, if you can find some sort of legend, or you remember some sort of legend from ancient Greece, I totally recommend trying to do an illustration of it. But again, you can illustrate something else. Maybe you want to illustrate something from your own life and sort of get this ancient Greek spin on it. You might have to do a little bit of research yourself, like find some reference photos of dogs in ancient Greece if you want to try to tell a story involving a dog. Or you might just be able to look at the bowl and say, okay, if I was an ancient Greek person, and I was drawing, and this is how I draw my bowls, how would I draw a dog? Maybe I'd make him long as well. Maybe I'd give him short little legs, or maybe I'd give him extra long legs because my dog has very long legs and I'm exaggerating things and they're exaggerating this bowl. There we are. And now I'm going to put Europa on his back. I'm going to look at the people that are kind of standing there. I'm going to kind of give a little person on his back. Yeah, just a little hands go like there. There she is. And there's her wee bun on top. And this sort of curls happening. I might have actually drawn a bit small, so I'm actually going to have trouble kind of adding details and things. So I would recommend drawing a bit bigger. There we are. And then I could even add these sort of decorative, reminiscent of geometric art bits. And sort of add some decoration. I might do that even later actually. I might try to get the colour in and then sort of separate it out. So now that I've got my sort of basic sketch in, I'm going to break out my watercolours. Again, if you don't have watercolours, no worries, use coloured pencil, use any sort of colour media you have. It's absolutely fine. Let's see. I think I'm going to make my background, no, I think it actually makes sense for it to be blue. I was going to change it up a bit differently to be different, but actually Europa, I'm sorry, I think I told the story wrong to you. I said that she was turned into a bowl. I think at some point she might have been turned into a bowl. But at one point Zeus turned into a bowl and carried her across the sea to an island. And this is the part that I'm illustrating right now. So that's why there's a lady on a bowl. I'm sorry, it must have been very confusing. But yes, Europa at some point was probably turned to a bowl if I remember correctly. I'm not even sure about that part actually. But there was a point where Zeus turns into a bowl, carries her across to an island, I believe it was Crete. Again, don't quote me, someone look it up, someone fact check me. But yes, brought to an island, across the water. So that is why I'm going to make the background blue, because it will be reminiscent of the water. And I think it'll really follow their colour palette. So that's one thing, you might not want to add colours that are going to kind of clash from the colour palette. If you've never seen anything pink in ancient Greek art, I wouldn't add anything pink. Or the right shade of pink, like fuchsia, you know, if you're going to do like a sort of neon pink or anything. I don't think they would have had that pigment. So maybe give that a pass today. But then maybe if you want to go with the sort of light browny pink thing that they might have had, then yeah, go for that, I say. So that's definitely something to keep in mind when you're doing a pastiche. Try to get the colours, to keep the colours realistic. I don't think my lady looks quite Grecan enough. But I think one of the reasons is because I did make her a little bit too small and I wasn't really able to get her the proper Greek physique of these sort of sculptures. But I can probably go in later with a small pen or something and try to get some good details that'll make her look more Grecan. You can do that today. For this project especially, I would say, you can do that whenever you want, but I would say for especially today, I would say, I'll get to my point, I promise. To do mixed media, so to do watercolour, and then once that dries, do a bit of pen, do a bit of colour pencil on top of your watercolour, and yeah, do more than one media on your piece for the Minoan art. But yes. So those are your two projects for today. You have colourful Minoan art and black and white geometric art. You might even want to sort of do your geometric art on like a toned paper, if you have any sort of brown paper or something. I think that would be really cool. You could also, if you have paint and everything, paint your paper a certain colour, like a sort of browns and things, and then wait till it dries, and then do your inks and everything on top of that, and that'll look really cool. So I'm actually gonna let this dry before I do any more colour on the cow or anything like that, because I don't want them to blend into each other. Plus the cow was a white cow if I remember correctly anyways, so I might just want to do some sort of spotchy grey patches or something, just to sort of give them a little bit more interest, because they don't really seem to do much shading at all. If we remember our elements, they're really using line and shape, a lot of shape especially, and colour for the Minoans. So yes, I'm really looking forward to seeing all your sort of Minoan Greek and geometric art pieces. I hope you all have a lovely, lovely day and stay safe. I'll see you all next week. Bye.